Jacksonville Jaguars football history. Y'all think I'm crazy? Yeah, stick around. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you, folks, and welcome to a weekend edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am your host, Tony Wiggins. Been covering this team for a little over 13 years right at this point on various platforms, and we appreciate you making Locked On Jaguars your first listen. Today's show is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Jaguars listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. That's right. So use the Locked On at checkout at Blue Nile to mark that very special moment in time. Reminding you, we are free on all platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get podcasts, including our YouTube page. I got to let you guys know. We talk about marking time, Blue Nile, getting an engagement and marking. This is very similar. I love today's sponsor because it's very similar to what we do. And it was what we all, when I say we, I'm not just talking about here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm talking about the fans. The fans are engaging with the team. One thing the Jaguars can't say when you talk about viability and all of these things is that fans don't have the interest and the engagement with this club that's required by a team that's very that's going to be at some point very good, and we hope. So when I opened this show and I said 2022 is going to be the most important year in the history of this team, I mean from the perspective of the future. And I also mean that I think 2022 will be the root. If you look at this big tree, you look at a family tree, this will be the root of, it won't be the first time that they've been relevant. Okay, the Jaguars have been to 3 AFC championship games sporadically spread out through the 27, 28-year history. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think this will be the root because those are branches. This will be the root of that family tree when we look 40, 50, 60 years down the line. Hopefully we'll all still be here. If I will, I'll probably look like this. I won't have no teeth, but still, we'll look back at 2022 as that moment. I'm not saying it could be because every year could be that. I'm saying it will be. Why will this be the moment that this franchise turned everything around? Why will we want to mark this in time as that day or that period when we think about it chronologically? Why would we want to look back at 2022 and think that this was the year? I'll tell you why. Because I think Shad Khan got it right this time. You all heard me. I think they got it right this time. And I think getting it right had some growing pains, right? Because it started last year with Urban and you got Trevor Lawrence. I think getting Trevor Lawrence was a part of the good reasons why I think that this point in period in time is the right one. But you had to go through the whole Urban Meyer or whatever, and you got rid of it and you fixed it really quick. And that is critical that we give him credit, but we're going to beat him up a little bit too for doing it in the first place, even though I thought hiring a guy like Urban Meyer was a good move because it finally put the accountability on one person as opposed to guys just sitting there, everybody pointing at each other, trying to figure out what's wrong. Make no mistake about it, we knew what was wrong and we knew who was to blame last year with Urban Meyer. So that is a byproduct of making a mistake. Okay? At least having one guy accountable for everything. And he tried to point the finger and blame other people, but it's just too many receipts. But here's what they did. They hired Doug Peterson this year. And y'all gonna kill me when I say this, but they actually retained Trent Baalke, which is something else at the time I thought was a mistake, may turn out not to be. I wanted a complete fresh start, a new beginning. You got that in the coaching staff finally. You got a lot of it in the scouting department, and you got some in the front office when after the draft and after free agency, they hired a second assistant GM. But maybe what Trent Baalke means is he was trying to change things last year, but he got a little pushback from Urban Meyer. And then some of the things that he did do last year actually might turn out to work this year. I'll tell you what, it's not just Trevor Lawrence, it's also Tyson Campbell. It's not just Tyson Campbell, it's also Travis Etienne. It's not just Travis Etienne, it's also Andre Cisco. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. Now, the free agency left a lot to be desired because outside of Marvin Jones Jr., who had a lot of stats on a bad team, so those stats don't mean the same when you look at them and sit them side by side with someone with equal numbers from a better team. But they do have Jamal Agnew, right? They still have James Robinson. The key to this entire thing was Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson gave the guys practice. They gave all the veterans, except guys coming back from injury, the day off. Took them to golf restaurant and said it was just only that they were only going to continue for rookies, that everybody else was good to a training camp, that they were just going to have the rookies play and have the guys coming back from injury, guys that needed to be there. And I think that's smart because I think he's taken inventory and looked at what he has here, and he realizes that he doesn't have to press these veterans anymore. But why do I think all of these things mean that this is the moment in time that you mark for the Jacksonville Jaguars? In segment 2, I'm going to break each and every point about that down and tell you why. Now, I'm not even going to try to shock you or surprise you. It does not mean they're going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't even mean they're going to be making it to the playoffs. In segment 3, I'm going to, in a nutshell, tell you what the Jaguar fan base seems to have been waiting for, because I am not going to sit here and pretend that I speak for them all. But from a person who covers the team, I'm going to tell you exactly why I said that and why and what it means, the things that I bring up in segment 2, what it's going to mean as a whole. Now, you guys are thinking, like, I use the word epic when I describe what could happen with this team this year. How could it be epic if they don't end up winning the championship? How could it be epic if they don't end up winning the division and going to the playoffs? Because they've done those things in the past, and then it fizzed out after one season. I think what they're doing now are things that are going to be sustainable long term. And I'm going to make sure I get into that with you here on a weekend edition of Locked On Jaguars. I'm going to tell you all about it starting in segment 2 when I start breaking down the individual pieces and the things that I think they have. And then we'll get into what it means in terms of long-term expectation and why I think it's so critical, even if it doesn't mean they're going to win right away. So hang tight. After I tell you about BetOnline.net is your number one source for all the betting stats and sports info. That's right. These playoffs, man. I went to sleep the other night. It was a hockey game on. New York was up 2-1 in the series, and they had a 2-0 lead. And now I found out they're down 3-2. I don't have any idea how it happened, but I got to watch. If you're smart enough to do that on your own and figure how that ended up being that way, then fine. But if you're not like me, you need BetOnline to help you sort through some of that information. Boston's up 2-1 also in the NBA Finals, and I think they go up 3-1 tonight. But don't take my word for it. Go to BetOnline because it's your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. You got to start here with us, right here on Locked On Jaguars, and we love it, man. Without you, there is no us, and we appreciate you making us your first listen. I have an important thing to ask you to do, though. It's a favor. We put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. There's 10 different ones, and all of them are worth $100. You're going to have a chance to win one. You take our audience survey and you do it at podcast.com/survey. We thank you for your help in advance. All right, let's get to the things that I think the Jaguars have done really well, and I'm going to connect year one to year two. So they started this in year one. I call it year one because it was year one after they cleaned house, sort of, in the front office department, with the exception of Trent Baalke. They drafted Trevor Lawrence. They drafted the other players. All right. They had money left over from the cap because they didn't do what I thought they should have done, was spend more money. And I'll still go to my grave saying they should have spent more money considering the situation they were in, because nobody knew Urban Meyer was going to be out of here after 1 year, right? So I think they learned a lot from year one in free agency. The thing is you can either keep being stubborn and being the same, or you can change and try to get better. So the thing for me is, in year two, when they got super, super ultra aggressive in free agency and they went out and got pieces. Now, they didn't go and get a bunch of A+ pieces for A+ money. They got some solid B pieces for A- money, and it kind of ticked everybody off. But I think the Jaguars were in a situation that that's what they had to do. They fortified their team in certain spots with proven players, and then they were able to actually do a little bit more than I expected when they got like Darius Williams in free agency. They added not only Doug Peterson, but Press Taylor, Jim Bob Cooter, and Mike McCoy. You got 4 guys that are used to coaching quarterbacks in offense, and they are going to insulate Trevor Lawrence from a lot of things that Trevor Lawrence had to do in the past. But more importantly, I think what they're going to do is they're going to pile a bunch of stuff on his plate, and they're going to push him and push him and push him. And I think guys that are people who were the number 1 overall pick out of high school, or the number 1 overall pick in the draft, the number 1 overall prospect in high school, guys that are yoked that way want to be pushed and prodded. I use the example of going out and getting a Belgian Malinois. You better be prepared to exercise that dog 2 hours every day, or he's going to tear your house up, because he's built to absorb the activity. And I think alpha players, especially at the most alpha position in sports, which is quarterback, the great ones don't perish or get small or skinny under a heavy workload or on a lot of pressure. And I think Trevor Lawrence craves that. And I think when you're the kind of guy he is, that's what you want. So there can't be, it can't be looked at as a negative that they're going to press him and put more stuff on him. I think it's a negative when you don't. And I do believe that hiring Doug Peterson and the subsequent hiring of the guys offensively that he's chosen, they're going to have a lot of checks and balances on offense, where they're going to be going for proficiency. Guys are really going to have a computer program's approach to how they play every single week. And you're going to have an identity, and you're going to get to what Jaguar football offensively is all about. I think it was a great hire also to hire Mike Caldwell defensively, because it's a guy who's played, who's coached with Doug Peterson before, but he's also played and coached under teams that have won championships in the very, recent history, in a very, in right now. It's not like something that happened 10, 12 years ago. He came from Tampa. And the other thing is Mike played the game, and he has the respect of the guys in the locker room. And I think he has the respect of all of the coaches. I heard something that Brenton Buckner said yesterday. Shout out to the defense for looking pretty good in these mini camps and OTAs. And a quick mention that Jordan Smith will be out for the year. I had a chance to discuss it with him. He says he's going to come back bigger and better than ever. So we wish 92 speedy recovery. So he'll come back next year fully locked and loaded and ready to go. Rush end is one of those positions where they've really invested a lot. So as we talked about on the show previous to this one, where can they absorb injuries a little bit? I think they could absorb. You don't ever want to see anybody get hurt, but they can shake this one off and keep pressing on without it totally derailing what they were supposed to do. And it gives a younger player, another young player, a chance to step up. But I really like the communication, and I really like the front to back emphasis and the system, and how all of these units look and appear to just be a better blend and a better mix of what you want your defense and what you want anything on that side of the ball to look like. So the things that I think they've done well, that's going to really, really bode well for the future, is the continuity of coaching staff, the interaction that you're getting and you're hearing about from players about how they're learning, they're being taught, I think it's fabulous. The chemistry and the credibility that comes along with the fact that you have a head coach that won a Super Bowl within the last 5 years, and now you have a defensive coordinator that was on the staff where his unit shined to help them win a Super Bowl just 2 years ago in Tampa, in Doug Peterson and Mike Caldwell. I really do believe that they've set the foundation, and it may move a little bit slower. It may not be as exciting, but, and this is what I'm going to get to in segment 3, it's just going to look normal. You're going to have normal competitiveness. You're going to have what other franchises may balk at when their teams go 10-7 or 9-8 or 8-9. To the Jaguar fan base and to anyone that has watched this team, that's going to look like you just got a brand new car. You want a brand new car and the price is right or something. Yeah, you're going to be happy to see just this sense of normalcy and this sense of competence and organization and accountability and guys improving right before your very eyes. And I think all of those things are going to be critical to this team finally getting to where they're supposed to go down the road. What is that? I'll explain it to you here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. What is it? What are we talking about as we welcome you to Locked On Jaguars segment number 3, and we thank you for making us your first listen because it's your team every day. What is this thing that we're talking about? How can this be the most important, just so you guys won't accuse me of getting clickbait, how can this be the most important year for the Jaguars organization? Many times the most important year isn't the year that things manifest themselves. Sometimes the most important year is the year that you can look back and say, when did this thing take that necessary turn that it needed to for this franchise to finally start building and elevating from its foundation? So we've used this analogy several times since I've done this podcast for 3 years. The Jaguars pour slab. Say you're building a house, they pour slab, and they put those first foundational pieces up. Well, it gets like a quarter of the way or halfway through, and then you realize you got to tear it all down and start over. So you never see the elevation. You never see what the home actually looks like. Well, this team has been that way. They won under Coughlin, and then it went back down because they didn't win the whole thing. And then another period under Jack Del Rio, another period under Jack Del Rio, it goes here, and then it fizzles out. And then you pop up a little bit more, and then they fire Jack, and then they start all over. And then it starts all over. It seems like it's taking forever. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get this spike in 2017. They're in the AFC Championship game, and everybody looks around and says, we got all these young players. We're going to be good. We're going to be good. And then, boom, it falls apart again, right? At what point and for what reasons and what will be the catalyst to make sure that this thing actually does turn and turn correctly and turn properly? One thing might be evident, and that is that the ascension back to relevance may be slower than you think. Instead of having a mercurial rise between 2016 and 17, and then having that fall, and all that does is just shake you up on the inside and say, we just can't have nice things. And even if we do look a bit, it makes you pessimistic. Even if we do look good, it ain't going to stay because we never sustain anything. They're good for a year or two, and then they fall back down. I think with the way that they're going about their business, with Doug Peterson getting a second chance after winning the Super Bowl and then being fired in Philly, with Mike Caldwell being the first guy. So I think I can tell you one thing that might end up happening. What might end up happening is this turn might be so good that a lot of these assistant coaches, guys like Mike Caldwell, might eventually in a year or two start getting jobs from other places. That means you're doing something right? For the most part, it does. It means that you're doing, I mean, there are examples. You can probably take guys that got jobs that were on bad units and all, but for the most part, it means you're doing something right when your coaches are not just being hired because another coach got fired and the staff, these guys are just playing, rotating seats. But when your coaches start being elevated because teams want to elevate them because they were a part of something that actually they saw what the process was to turn something around and make something that you can be proud of. Make a football team that every single week they play like a computer program. You know exactly what, when you slip that disc in, you know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to be super, super competitive. On any given Sunday, they they have a reasonable chance, based on what a reasonable person might think, to win a football game. They'll have 7 or 8 players on their team that are untouchable. They'll have a coach that wants to be here, and Doug Peterson looks like a guy that if things go right, he'll want to be here for the next 15 years, right? They'll have a Jaguar way of drafting and evaluating talent, because once it starts proving itself on the field that it works, then you're going to keep heading in that right direction. They'll have superstar players on their team. I think Trevor Lawrence and Trevon Walker have a chance to be superstars. I think Josh Allen and Tyson Campbell also have a chance to be guys that garner a lot of consideration to go to the Pro Bowl. And I think Brenton Buckner is going to help Devon Hamilton, a guy that I thought he basically singled him out and said, we're going to do more than just let him take up blockers. We're going to use that 6'4", 328-pound body of his and to let him go and let him rip and play 3 technique and be what Marcel Darius was at his greatest. Same sort of body type. Devon's probably a little taller, but athletic, in shape. He's a big guy without being fat. Andre Cisco has a chance to be really, really good. And a lot of these performances that I anticipate from these guys will be magnified by the point that they're playing competitive football and they're winning some games. And eventually, the games that they don't win that are really, really close, because they're young, they learn how to win behind Trevor Lawrence, behind some of the weapons on offense. At some point in the next year or two, they might draft a young receiver that turns out to be the best X receivers since sliced bread. Good things will start to happen for this team because they'll be prepared for good things to happen. Because luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So the opportunity for those things will happen, but they're going to be prepared because they're sound in their foundation and they know who they are. And Doug Peterson will have an awful lot to do with that. That's what I mean by they may not win the Super Bowl, they may not win the division, and they may not make the playoffs. But you can't tell me if you go from having the worst record in the NFL 2 years in a row, and you lay a 9-8 down, and of those 8 losses, 4 of them were games that you were right there in the last 5 minutes of the game. And of those 9 wins, 2 or 3 of them are from playoff teams. And of those 9 wins, you sweep a couple of teams in your own division to make sure that everyone knows you're no longer the doormat of the AFC South. And every single week, people don't come to the games going, I wish we could be competitive. I hope, it doesn't go like it did last week. No, where you don't know what's going to happen. But one thing you do know is these guys are going to come out and they're bringing it. They're going to be big and they're going to be physical and they're going to give you something to be proud of. Now, if in year 2 under Doug Peterson, which will be year 3 under Trevor Lawrence, if at that point they start winning these games and now they turn that 9-8 into a 12-5, now there will be 2 straight years of the improvement and the ascension towards normal competitive football that teams like Kansas City and for a long time teams like Seattle and Green Bay and Pittsburgh that they have every single week with a young team, with more additions in the draft and free agency, and with the continuity in the front office and with the coaching staff. And now an identity sets in, and then and only then will we say 2022. 2022, that was the year. That was the year, that was the start of all of this stuff. It's not when it all manifested itself into the results that we want, but it's going to be a start. I think in 2023, they're going to win the division. They're going to win about 12 games, and they're going to make a nice run in the playoffs and give you something to be proud of. And I think in 2024, they will be one of the favorites, one of the 5 or 6 favorites to be playing on Super Bowl Sunday. And I think we'll all look back, and it was the first year under Doug Peterson when they changed the culture. When they what do they call a tiller? Is that what they use in farming? When they turn that topsoil and they plant more seeds and they start the process of watering it. This year, you're going to start seeing that greenery come through that soil. This year, you're going to start seeing, and you're going to have the audacity to imagine how good this team can be. Next year, you're going to start seeing some harvest. Next year, you're going to learn how to master it. And then the year after, in 2024, you're going to be expecting the crop to come in and do what it's supposed to do. And we'll look back at 2022 as the year it all started. I'm confident. I'm hopeful. I'm all of these things, man. I'm optimistic. And you can get my take on not only the Jaguars, but around the league every Wednesday on Locked On NFL. But you don't have to wait for me. Monday through Friday on Locked On NFL is a great podcast. It's its own show. It's a national podcast. You'll hear a lot from a lot of guys around the Locked On NFL and podcast network that give it to you just raw, uncut, and it's a daily podcast, and you'll absolutely love it. Make sure you keep making us your first listen and make Locked On NFL your second listen. I want you guys to have a very, very nice weekend. Enjoy it. And remember the day I gave you this optimism that I think 2022 is a big year for your Jacksonville Jaguars. Until then, you guys take care and have a nice weekend, and I will see you back early next week with another episode of Locked On Jaguars.